The plane was already late. That alone made people angry. In the VIP terminal of JFK Airport, impatience hung heavier than perfume and polished leather. The flight, New York to Los Angeles, was one of those routes where money sat in the front, ambition filled business class, and exhaustion lived in the back. Seat 1A had been empty longer than usual. People noticed. In first class, empty seats were rare, and when they existed, they usually belonged to someone important. The man who boarded last. When boarding began, celebrities came first. Then hedge fund executives. Then a senator's assistant who wanted everyone to know who she worked for. Still, seat 1A stayed empty. Until the final call. That's when Daniel cross-boarded. No entourage. No rush. No announcement. He wore a dark navy coat, simple watch, no visible logos. His hair was short, his expression unreadable. He handed his boarding pass to the flight attendant, who glanced at it twice. Then a third time. Her posture changed instantly. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Cross," she said carefully. "Right this way." Eyes followed him. Not because he looked rich. Because the crew reacted like he was. The woman in 1C. Across the aisle sat Veronica Hale, mid-30s, sharp jawline, silk blazer, confidence that had never been questioned. She noticed Daniel sit in 1A. She didn't like it. Not consciously, not logically, but instinctively. She leaned toward the man beside her. "Is he important?" she whispered. The man shrugged. "Probably tech." Veronica watched Daniel place his bag under the seat. Calm. Unbothered. No phone calls. No selfies. No performance. That bothered her more than arrogance ever could. The cabin settles. Champagne was poured. Menus distributed. The hum of privilege resumed. Veronica smiled at the flight attendant. "Just water for now." Daniel declined everything. He stared out the window as the engines powered up. Not nervous. Not excited. As if flying private or commercial made no difference to him. The first assumption. As the plane climbed, turbulence hit unexpectedly. A jolt. A gasp. Veronica's glass tipped slightly, splashing water onto Daniel's armrest. "Oh, sorry," she said quickly, then paused. She noticed his skin tone. Dark. Not just tan. Black. Her smile thinned. Not cruel, but measured. He said nothing. "Just wipe the water with a napkin." "That seat is usually reserved," she added casually. Daniel turned to her. "It still is," he said calmly. She laughed lightly. "I meant, usually." "I know," he replied. Silence followed. People start watching. Across first class, a couple exchanged looks. In row 2, a man subtly leaned to see Daniel's watch. No Rolex. No Patek. Just clean steel. The curiosity grew. Veronica pushes. "I fly this route every week," Veronica said. "I've never seen you." Daniel nodded. "I don't fly often." "Oh." She raised an eyebrow. "Private then?" "Sometimes," he said. That was it. No bragging. No explanation. That answer landed heavier than a flex. The question that shouldn't matter. Veronica studied him again. "So, what do you do?" she asked. Daniel didn't answer immediately. He looked at her, really looked. "I buy companies," he said. She laughed. Loud enough for others to hear. "That's cute." Daniel smiled faintly. Not offended. Not amused. Something else. The shift in the air. The captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be cruising at 37,000 feet. Daniel closed his eyes briefly, as if grounding himself. Veronica crossed her legs, satisfied. She had decided who he was. And she was wrong. What no one knew. Daniel Cross wasn't just rich. He was invisible by design. No Wikipedia page. No interviews. No social media. He owned controlling interests in airlines, hotels, and logistics firms that made the people in that cabin dependent on systems he controlled. This flight? It was a test. Not of service. Of people. The moment that changes everything. As the seatbelt sign turned off, a flight attendant approached Daniel. "Sir," she said quietly, The captain asked if you'd like to visit the cockpit later. Veronica froze. Daniel declined politely. No need, he said. Let them fly. The flight attendant nodded with respect and walked away. Every eye in first class locked onto Daniel. Veronica's smile finally cracked. Power rarely announces itself, but insecurity almost always does. The cabin after curiosity. After the flight attendant walked away from Daniel Cross, first class didn't return to normal. It pretended to. Champagne refill slowed. Conversations dropped an octave. People stopped talking around Daniel and started talking about him, quietly, sideways, with practiced discretion. Veronica Hale noticed every shift, and she didn't like the way the room had tilted. A reputation she believed in. Veronica wasn't used to being uncertain. She was the senior director of partnerships at Hale and North, a consulting firm whose clients included airlines, hotels, and luxury brands. Her job was to read people fast and decide who mattered. And in her world, people like Daniel usually announced themselves. They wore status. They signaled rank. They wanted recognition. Daniel did none of that, which, to Veronica, meant he was pretending. The whisper that starts it. She leaned toward the aisle and spoke softly to a flight attendant passing by. Excuse me, Veronica said with a sympathetic smile. Is everything okay with seat 1A? He seems different. The attendant paused. Different how, ma'am? Veronica lowered her voice. Well, the cockpit invitation? That's not typical. I just want to make sure there's no misunderstanding. The attendant's expression tightened, professional, neutral. Everything is in order, she said. Please enjoy your flight. And walked away. Veronica watched her go. That answer wasn't reassurance. It was dismissal. Daniel notices everything. Daniel hadn't turned his head. But he noticed. He noticed the shift in the attendant's posture. The slight delay in Veronica's smile afterward. The tension she didn't bother hiding now. People thought silence meant absence. They were wrong. The public question. Veronica straightened in her seat and spoke, just loud enough. So, she said, you said you buy companies. Daniel turned to her. Yes. She smiled sweetly. Which ones? Daniel considered her question. Usually the ones that need new leadership, he replied. A man in row 2 chuckled. Veronica pressed. And you do that how exactly? Quietly, Daniel said. More laughter, uneasy this time. The first laugh that crosses the line. Veronica tilted her head. I mean, no offense, but a lot of people say things like that. Daniel nodded. That's true. So, she continued, are we talking startups? Or aspirations? Daniel met her eyes. Control, he said simply. The laughter stopped. The cabin divides. In first class, people began choosing sides without realizing it. Some leaned back, suddenly interested in their screens. Others leaned forward, alert. A man across the aisle murmured, "That's bold." Daniel didn't respond. Veronica felt the room slipping away from her. Her second mistake. Instead of stopping, she doubled down. "Well," she said lightly, "if you really are who you say you are, you wouldn't mind sharing more, right?" Daniel studied her face. "I would," he said. That was it. No explanation. No defense. Just refusal. The silence that follows. The air thickened. Veronica laughed again. Sharper this time.
Wow.
Touchy. Daniel looked away. Not defeated.
Done.
And that was worse. A different kind of attention. A senior flight attendant approached, not to Daniel, but to Veronica. "Ma'am," she said quietly, "please keep conversations respectful." Veronica blinked. "I'm just talking." The attendant nodded. "I know. Let's keep it that way." And then this mattered. She turned to Daniel. "Sir, can I get you anything?" Daniel shook his head politely. "No, thank you." The imbalance was unmistakable. Veronica's internal alarm. Something cold slid into Veronica's chest. Not fear. Calculation. She had misjudged something. Not him. The room. The name that changes everything. A man 2 rows back leaned forward, whispering to his partner. That's Daniel Cross. The name moved like static. Veronica heard it. Who? She whispered. The man glanced at her. You don't know? Her pulse spiked. Daniel's phone lights up. Daniel's phone vibrated once. He glanced at it. A message from operations. Aircraft ETA confirmed. LAX team standing by. Board review moved to 7 p.m. Daniel locked the screen. Veronica saw only one word. Board. Her smile finally vanished. The realization begins. She replayed everything. The crew's reaction. The cockpit invitation. The refusal to explain. This wasn't arrogance. It was insulation. End of part 2. Veronica Hale had made her first irreversible mistake. She assumed power needed approval. And now, she was sitting across the aisle from a man who didn't need permission from anyone on that plane. Some names don't need repetition. They land once. And stay. The whisper becomes a weight. That's Daniel Cross. The words didn't travel loudly through first class. They didn't need to. They settled, like a temperature change people felt before they understood it. Veronica Hale stared at the man who had said it, her mouth opening slightly. Cross? She repeated. As in. The man nodded once. As in Cross Group. Private holdings. Quiet acquisitions. Veronica's pulse quickened. That's not possible, she said. He'd be older. Surrounded. Loud. The man looked at Daniel again. That's the point. Daniel doesn't turn around. Daniel Cross didn't react. He didn't scan faces. Didn't correct anyone. Didn't claim the name. He stared out the window, the curve of the earth faintly visible against the afternoon sky. People mistook that for indifference. It wasn't. It was control. Veronica recalculates. Veronica sat back slowly, smoothing her blazer, replaying the last hour in her mind. The cockpit invitation. The deference from the crew. The refusal to explain. This wasn't an act. This was insulation, layers of it. And she had pressed against it publicly. Her instincts screamed at her to recover. The attempted reset. She leaned slightly toward Daniel, lowering her voice. I didn't mean to come off dismissive, she said. First class can get performative. Daniel turned to her calmly. Yes, he said. That was all. No reassurance. No absolution. A different audience forms. Across first class, quiet conversations had stopped. People pretended to read menus they'd already memorized. They were listening now, not to what was said, but to what wasn't. The flight attendant's signal. A senior flight attendant approached Daniel again, bending slightly. Sir, she said softly, the captain asked if you'd like an update on our arrival window. Veronica watched the interaction closely. Daniel shook his head. No need. Understood. The attendant replied, then hesitated. And thank you for your patience earlier. Daniel nodded. That thank you landed harder than any announcement. The third mistake. Veronica couldn't stop herself. So it's true, she said, louder than she meant to. You're that Daniel Cross. Daniel looked at her. Yes, he said evenly. A ripple moved through the cabin. Someone inhaled sharply. Veronica felt exposed. Then why say nothing, she pressed. Why sit there and let people assume? Daniel considered the question. Because, he said, assumptions are revealing. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was instructive. A passenger speaks out of turn. A man in row 2 leaned forward, emboldened. So you just test people? He asked. That's manipulative. Daniel met his gaze. No, he said calmly. I observe. People test themselves. The man leaned back, chastened. Veronica's image fractures. Veronica felt the room shifting again, away from her this time. Not hostile, aware. She had become the reference point, the one who had spoken too much. Her final push. She forced a laugh. Well, I suppose congratulations are in order. Daniel raised an eyebrow. For what? For being discreet, she said. Most people would enjoy the attention. Daniel looked at her, unblinking. Attention is expensive, he said. I prefer assets. That ended it. The cabin's verdict. No one laughed. No one spoke. People returned to their screens, their drinks, their silence. But it was a different silence now. One that had made a decision. Daniel's phone vibrates again. Daniel glanced at his phone. Another message. Legal confirmed. Mid-sky review complete. No issues. He locked the screen. Veronica saw only the calm with which he did it. The realization settles. She finally understood. This flight wasn't random. This seat wasn't accidental. And Daniel Cross wasn't interested in impressing anyone aboard. He was measuring systems. And she had volunteered herself as data. Power doesn't crack loudly. It slips. And once it slips in public, there's no putting it back where it was. The calm before the slip. For a while after Daniel confirmed his name, first class pretended to move on. People adjusted headphones. Sipped drinks they no longer tasted. Avoided eye contact with Veronica Hale. She felt it. That subtle social exile that arrived without announcement. She had spent her career controlling rooms. Now the room had quietly moved away from her. Veronica tries to reclaim ground. She straightened, crossed her legs, and smiled toward the aisle. "Well," she said, loud enough to be heard, "I suppose this flight just got more interesting." No one responded. Daniel didn't turn. The silence felt deliberate. And it made something snap inside her. The comment that changes everything. "You know," Veronica continued, her tone sharpening, "it must be exhausting pretending not to enjoy this." Daniel finally looked at her. "I'm not pretending," he said. She laughed, short, brittle. "Come on. You sit in 1A. The crew treats you like royalty. Everyone whispers your name." She gestured vaguely around the cabin. "And you expect us to believe you don't enjoy the power?" Every eye lifted. Daniel's voice stayed level. "Enjoyment isn't the same as dependence." Veronica scoffed. "Easy to say when you have it." Daniel tilted his head slightly. "Is it?" The cabin freezes. A glass clinks somewhere. A flight attendant paused mid-step. Veronica felt heat rush to her face. She hadn't meant to sound offensive, but she had. And she hated that. Her fourth mistake. She leaned closer to Daniel, lowering her voice, but not enough. "So, what are you doing here really?" she asked. "This isn't just a flight. People like you don't just sit." Daniel studied her carefully. Then he said the one thing she didn't expect. "I'm here to see how systems behave under pressure." The cabin went very still. Veronica's smile vanished. "That's vague," she said. Daniel nodded. "It's also accurate. The incident, turbulence struck again, harder this time." The plane jolted sharply. A drink slid off Veronica's tray and tipped. Red wine spilling across Daniel's armrest, sleeve, and seat. Gasps rippled through first class. "Oh my," Veronica exclaimed, then stopped. She looked at the spill. Then at Daniel. Then at the people watching. For half a second, she could have apologized. She didn't. "Well," she said lightly, "at least now you'll remember this flight." That was the moment. Not the spill. The response. Daniel's reaction. Daniel didn't move. He didn't swear. Didn't raise his voice. He calmly took a napkin and wiped his sleeve. Then he pressed the call button. The cabin waited. Authority arrives. A senior flight attendant rushed over. "Oh my God, sir, I'm so sorry." "It's fine," Daniel said evenly. "But I'd like this documented." Veronica stiffened. "Documented," she snapped. "It was turbulence." Daniel looked at her. "Turbulence doesn't comment afterward." The attendant froze. She nodded slowly. "Yes, sir." Witnesses appear. "I saw it," said a man in row 2 quietly. There wasn't any apology. "So did I," added a woman behind them. Veronica's chest tightened. She hadn't expected witnesses. She had expected tolerance. "The captain is notified." The attendant spoke softly into her intercom. Veronica caught one word. "Captain." Her stomach dropped. Veronica loses control. "This is ridiculous," she said sharply. "You're making a scene over a stain." Daniel met her eyes. "No," he said calmly. "You made a choice in front of witnesses." The words hit harder than any accusation. The cabin decides. No one defended Veronica. No one laughed.
No one minimized it.
People returned to their screens, but the verdict had been delivered. Quietly. Irrevocably. Daniel's final sentence. As the attendant stepped away, Daniel spoke once more. "Ms. Hale," he said evenly, "this flight will end." She swallowed. And then he added, "So, will the assumptions you brought onto it? Power doesn't disappear in the air. It waits until landing." The cabin after documentation. Once the incident was logged, first class went unnaturally quiet. Not awkward quiet. Final quiet. The kind that follows a decision already made. Veronica Hale sat rigid, staring straight ahead, jaw clenched, so tight it hurt. The stain on Daniel Cross's sleeve had been mostly cleaned, but the moment itself couldn't be wiped away. She felt it now.
The shift.
People weren't watching Daniel anymore. They were watching her. Daniel doesn't press further. Daniel didn't say another word. That worried Veronica more than anger ever could. He returned to his tablet, scrolling calmly, as if nothing of consequence had happened. But she noticed something else. 2 flight attendants whispered near the galley. One nodded, serious. This wasn't staying on the plane. The descent announcement. The captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be beginning our descent into Los Angeles shortly." Veronica's pulse spiked. Descent meant ground. Ground meant systems. And systems meant consequences. A private conversation attempt. She leaned toward Daniel, voice low, controlled. "Let's not escalate this," she said. "There's no reason to involve anyone else." Daniel looked at her. "I didn't escalate," he replied calmly. "I recorded." She swallowed. "You know how these things get," she pressed. "Misinterpreted." Daniel nodded. "That's why witnesses matter." Her throat tightened. The flight attendant returns. A senior attendant approached again, this time standing closer to Veronica than to Daniel. "Ma'am," she said quietly, "upon landing, airport operations may want to speak with you." Veronica stiffened.
"For what?" she demanded.
"For clarification," the attendant replied neutrally. Then she turned to Daniel. "Sir, ground services are aware. You'll be guided separately if needed." Daniel nodded once. No emotion. No triumph. Just acknowledgement. Veronica's reputation cracks. Veronica's mind raced. Her company worked with airlines, with airport authorities, with corporate travel divisions. This wasn't just embarrassing. It was dangerous. She thought of emails, of meetings, of quiet favors that relied on being liked. And she realized something terrifying. This wasn't about who Daniel Cross was. It was about who she had shown herself to be. The cabin watches the final act. As the plane descended, people prepared to leave. Belts fastened. Tables locked. Phones powered on. But attention lingered on row 1. A man in row 2 leaned to his partner and whispered. She didn't have to say that. His partner nodded. That's what did it. Daniel stands first. When the seatbelt sign turned off at the gate, Daniel stood. Not rushed. Not dramatic. He retrieved his bag, adjusted his coat, and waited patiently. Veronica stood too fast. Their eyes met briefly. She looked away first. The separation. At the aircraft door, a ground supervisor stood beside 2 airport officials. "Mr. Cross," the supervisor said respectfully, "this way, please." Daniel nodded and stepped aside. The officials turned to Veronica. "Ms. Hale," one said, "we need to ask you a few questions before you proceed." Her face drained of color. "I have a meeting," she said sharply. "I'm expected." The official's tone remained calm. "This won't take long." Everyone saw it. First class. Business class.
Crew.
The separation wasn't loud. It was definitive. Daniel walks away. Daniel didn't look back. As he walked down the jet bridge, his phone vibrated. A message from legal operations. Post-incident review triggered. Hale and North flagged for compliance assessment. Daniel exhaled once. Not relief. Completion. Veronica stays behind. Veronica stood at the aircraft door, heat crawling up her neck. This wasn't how power was supposed to work. She had spoken. She had assumed. She had dismissed. And now the system she trusted was doing what systems do best, recording behavior. Some consequences don't arrive with sirens. They arrive with calendar invites. The first email. By the time Veronica Hale reached her car, her phone had already vibrated 3 times. She ignored it. She needed air, control, distance from the jet bridge, where everything had shifted. But the 4th vibration came before she could start the engine. Subject: urgent. Internal review request. From Compliance Office, Hale and North. Her chest tightened. This wasn't public.
Yet.
Which meant it was worse. Daniel's ride is quiet. Daniel Cross sat in the back of a black SUV, rolling away from LAX. No escort. No rush. Just efficiency. His assistant's message came through calmly. 2 partners from Hale and North requested clarification. We declined comment. Daniel typed back. No comment is clarification. He put the phone away. The city moved past the window. Veronica walks into a different office. The next morning, Veronica stepped into Hale and North's headquarters expecting routine. She got silence. No greetings. No casual nods. Just a receptionist who avoided eye contact and an assistant who said, "They're waiting for you upstairs." They never meant good news. The conference room. 3 people sat at the table. HR, legal, and a partner she hadn't seen in months. A tablet lay face up between them.
Paused.
Veronica sat slowly. "What's this about?" she asked. The partner didn't answer immediately. "An incident report from Flight 1182, he said finally. Her stomach dropped. How did? It was forwarded, legal interrupted, through an airline compliance channel we're contractually connected to. Veronica realized the truth. Daniel Cross hadn't said a word. The system had done the rest. The video that doesn't lie. The partner tapped the tablet. The screen played. No sound. Just footage. Veronica leaning forward. Daniel staying still. The wine spill. Her mouth moving afterward. No context. No defense. Just sequence. When it ended, no one spoke. Daniel watches a different screen. Daniel stood in a glass-walled office overlooking downtown LA. His legal counsel spoke evenly. Hale and North has initiated an internal ethics review. They're concerned about exposure. Daniel nodded. Expected. Do you want to engage? Daniel shook his head. Let systems complete their cycle. Veronica tries to reframe. That footage doesn't show intent, Veronica said, forcing steadiness. It was turbulence. A misunderstanding. HR folded her hands. We're not reviewing the spill, she said. We're reviewing your conduct afterward. The partner added quietly. You represented us in public. That landed harder than any accusation. The first loss. The meeting ended without resolution. Just process. As Veronica returned to her office, her assistant stood waiting. Your 2 p.m. client call has been reassigned, she said softly. And the Delta Partnership meeting has been postponed. Postponed. Not canceled.
Yet.
Daniel's name is never spoken. Later that day, a junior analyst whispered to a colleague. Is this about that Cross guy? The colleague shook his head. No one sang his name. That was the point. Veronica notices the pattern. By midweek, it was undeniable. Meetings without her. Emails without CCs. Decisions made before she arrived. She hadn't been fired. She had been paused. And pause, in her industry, meant evaluation. A quiet confirmation. Veronica checked her phone late that night. One message stood out. From a former colleague at another firm. Just a heads up, your name came up in a risk call today. Nothing official. Just awareness. Awareness. She stared at the word. That was how reputations cracked. Not publicly. Internally. Daniel reads the update. Daniel received one final note from legal. Hale and North flagged as observe. No action required from us. Daniel closed the message. The system had heard. That was enough. Nothing goes public all at once. First, it circulates. The rumor that has no source. Veronica Hale noticed it on a Thursday morning. Not a headline. Not a message. A pause. She walked into a networking breakfast she had attended for years. Same hotel, same crowd, and felt it immediately. People smiled, but the smiles ended early. Conversations stopped when she approached, resumed after she passed. No one said her name. They didn't have to. The first question, that isn't direct. A former client leaned in during coffee. Rough travel last week? He asked lightly. Veronica's fingers tightened around her cup. Why? He shrugged. Just heard something. Something. That word spread faster than facts ever could. Daniel's world keeps moving. Daniel Cross didn't hear rumors. He heard updates. His operations director briefed him calmly. 2 media outlets inquired about internal conduct issues tied to an airline partner. No names mentioned. We declined comment. Daniel nodded. Good. Do you expect escalation? Daniel thought for a moment. No, he said. Exposure without substance burns out. He turned back to the city skyline. The article that isn't about her. By Friday, an industry blog posted a piece. Consulting firms under pressure to address executive conduct in public spaces. No names. No accusations. But the timing was unmistakable. Veronica read it twice. Then a third time. The comments section was worse. People didn't ask who. They asked how often. The office grows smaller. At Hale and North, Veronica's calendar thinned. Lunch invites disappeared. Side conversations stopped including her. She overheard a junior associate whisper. They're being careful. Careful of what?
Or who?
Daniel receives an invitation. Daniel received an invitation to speak at a closed-door executive forum. Topic: Invisible risk and public conduct. He declined. Instead, he sent a note. I'm not the lesson. Systems are. The organizer thanked him anyway. Veronica tries to control the narrative. Veronica scheduled a one-on-one with a senior partner. I need to understand where this is going, she said calmly. The partner sighed. Veronica, he said, this isn't about punishment. It's about exposure. Exposure to what? She snapped. Patterns, he replied, and the risk of them repeating. She leaned back. So, I'm a pattern now. The partner didn't deny it. The social shift. At a charity event that weekend, Veronica noticed something else.
People were polite,
but distant, as if proximity carried risk. A woman she once mentored avoided her entirely. That hurt more than the professional freeze. Daniel's name surfaces briefly. At the same event, someone whispered to another, isn't this tied to Daniel Cross somehow? The response came quick. Doesn't matter. He didn't say anything. That was the irony. Daniel's silence protected him. Veronica's words had exposed her. The cost of being discussed. Late that night, Veronica scrolled through her phone. No messages. No alerts. But she knew. She was being discussed in rooms she wasn't in. That realization settled heavy. Daniel reflects once. Daniel stood on his balcony. Night air cool against his skin. He thought briefly of the flight. Not with anger. With clarity. He hadn't corrected anyone. He hadn't accused. He had simply stayed still. And systems had moved around him. The line that can't be unheard. Veronica remembered something Daniel had said on the plane. Assumptions are revealing. She finally understood. They revealed the person making them. Power doesn't vanish. It stops responding. The call that goes to voicemail. Veronica Hale dialed a number she had never heard go unanswered.
Once. Twice.
Voicemail. She stared at the phone as if it had betrayed her. This wasn't a junior contact. This was a decision maker. She tried another number. Ringing. Then voicemail. A familiar pattern was forming. The internal memo. At 9:17 a.m., an internal memo circulated at Hale and North. Not dramatic. Not accusatory. Just procedural. Subject: temporary reassignment of client-facing responsibilities. Veronica read it slowly. Temporary. Reassignment. No mention of wrongdoing. No explanation. But her name was missing from every upcoming external engagement. She had been moved inside. away from visibility, away from leverage. Daniel watches from a distance. Daniel Cross received a brief update from operations. Hale and North implementing internal controls. Veronica Hale removed from external-facing roles. Daniel read it once, then archived it. No satisfaction. No relief. Just confirmation. The meeting that ends it. Veronica was called into another conference room. Same faces. Same silence. The senior partner spoke carefully. "We're placing you on internal review," he said. "This is not disciplinary. But it is limiting," Veronica finished. He nodded. "Until we understand risk exposure." She leaned forward. "So, I'm a liability." The partner didn't answer. That was answer enough. Public awareness arrives quietly. An industry newsletter published a follow-up piece. Still no names. But this line stood out. Several firms are quietly adjusting leadership visibility following recent high-profile in-flight conduct reviews. Veronica read it on her laptop, then closed it. The story was no longer confined to whispers.
It had language now.
The room she's no longer in. At a major conference in San Francisco, Hale and North announced its speaker lineup. Veronica's name had always been there. This year, it wasn't. She watched the live stream from her office. Applause echoed through her speakers. None of it for her. Daniel declines again. Daniel was invited to the same conference. Different reason. Different panel. He declined. Instead, he sent a short note. Visibility isn't leadership. The organizer saved it. Veronica's circle shrinks. Friends she once saw weekly now replied slowly. Meetings turned into emails. Emails into silence. She hadn't been accused. But she had been marked. And in her world, marking was enough. The moment of clarity. Late one night, Veronica sat alone in her apartment, lights off, city glowing outside. She replayed the flight. Not the spill. Not the looks. The sentence. Turbulence doesn't comment afterward. She finally understood. It wasn't the accident. It was the choice she made after. Daniel's system moves on. Daniel approved 3 acquisitions that week. New teams. New leadership. No one mentioned the flight. It had already served its purpose. A final corporate decision. On Friday afternoon, Veronica received the email she'd been bracing for. Subject: Leadership Transition Notice. She didn't open it immediately. She already knew. When she did, it was brief. Effective immediately, Veronica Hale will transition out of her current role. Further details forthcoming. No apology. No praise. Just transition. What power leaves behind? Veronica sat back, numb. She hadn't been fired publicly. She hadn't been shamed. She had been removed quietly. The way influence actually ends. After influence leaves, something else arrives. Silence. And silence is honest. The first morning without a title. Veronica Hale woke up without an alarm. That alone felt wrong. No calendar alerts. No urgency vibrating through her phone. No assistant reminding her where to be. Her title, once stitched into her identity, had been removed quietly, like a nameplate unscrewed from a door. She stared at the ceiling longer than usual. For the first time in years, there was nowhere she had to go. The apartment feels smaller. Her apartment hadn't changed. The city still moved outside her window. But the space felt different. Without meetings, without calls, without constant validation. The walls felt closer. She made coffee and sat at the counter, scrolling through old emails. Invitations.
Praise.
Requests for access. All dated. All silent now. Daniel's world. Uninterrupted. Daniel Cross was in Chicago that morning, walking through a distribution hub he had acquired 6 months earlier. Hard hats.
Clipboards.
Efficiency. No one treated him differently than before. That was the point. His power didn't depend on attention. It depended on alignment. The call Veronica finally makes. Veronica hesitated before dialing her sister. They hadn't spoken in weeks. "Hey," her sister said cautiously. "You okay?" Veronica swallowed. "I think I lost myself somewhere," she admitted. There was a pause. Then her sister said gently, Maybe now you get to decide who you are without the room watching. The words landed heavier than any board decision. The question no one asks publicly. Later that day, Veronica walked outside. No sunglasses. No tailored jacket. Just herself. She passed a cafe she used to frequent for meetings. Inside, people laughed,
Talked. Argued.
no one looked at her. That hurt. Then, it didn't. She realized something unsettling. She didn't miss the attention. She missed the certainty. Daniel receives a final update. Daniel's legal counsel sent one last message. Hale and North matter closed. No further action required. Daniel read it, then deleted it. The system had finished its work. A moment of recognition. That evening, Veronica sat with a notebook she hadn't used in years. No strategy. No agenda. She wrote one sentence. I confused being heard with being right. She stared at it for a long time, then added another. And I confused power with permission. Daniel reflects briefly. Daniel stood in a hotel room, city lights stretching endlessly below. He thought about the flight, not with anger, not with satisfaction. With neutrality. He hadn't changed anything directly. He had simply remained still while systems did what they were designed to do. That was enough. Veronica faces the hardest part. The next morning, Veronica received messages from two former colleagues. One said nothing but, I'm sorry. The other said, this might be a chance. She didn't know which hurt more. The mirror moment. Standing in her bathroom, Veronica studied her reflection. Not the version polished for rooms. The unguarded one. She whispered aloud. What do I do now? The mirror didn't answer. But the question stayed. Daniel moves forward. Daniel boarded another flight. Different airline.
Different city.
As he settled into his seat, he didn't think about seat 1A. Or Veronica. Or the spill.
He thought about systems.
And how revealing they could be when people didn't interrupt them with noise. Some confrontations aren't arranged. They happen when neither side is looking for one. An invitation without leverage. 3 weeks after the transition notice, Veronica Hale received an email that didn't come from a firm, a board, or a client. It came from a nonprofit leadership forum in Santa Monica. Subject: Facilitated Dialogue, Observational Role. No speaking slot. No panel. No title attached. Just attendance. She almost declined. Then she noticed the location. The same coastal corridor where several logistics firms Daniel Cross had acquired were headquartered. That couldn't be coincidence. Or maybe, she told herself, everything didn't have to be. She accepted. Daniel arrives early. Daniel Cross arrived before the room filled. He liked rooms empty. You could feel the architecture of a place before people distorted it with expectation. He sat near the back. No assistant. No reserved seat.
Just a notebook and a pen.
Recognition without drama. When Veronica entered, she saw him immediately. Not because he stood out. Because he didn't. Their eyes met across the room. No shock. No apology. Just recognition. She took a seat 3 rows ahead. Not beside him. Not far away. Close enough to feel it. The conversation begins. The facilitator spoke about power dynamics in modern leadership. About perception. About accountability. About how systems respond to behavior more than intent. Veronica felt every word. Daniel listened without moving. The question that finds her. Midway through the session, the facilitator asked, has anyone experienced a moment where a small action created disproportionate consequences? Silence. Then Veronica raised her hand. Not confidently. Not shakily. Just honestly. Yes, she said. Every head turned. Her voice, without armor. I believed influence meant control, Veronica continued. And that if nothing technically went wrong, nothing would follow. She paused. I was wrong. The room stayed quiet. Not uncomfortable. Respectful. Daniel didn't look at her. He didn't need to. What she says next. I didn't lose my position because of an accident, she said. I lost it because of how I behaved when people were watching. That sentence landed.
Hard. And clean.
Daniel finally speaks. Later, near the end, the facilitator invited final thoughts. Daniel raised his hand. My observation, he said calmly, is that systems don't punish people. They reveal them. Veronica turned slightly. He continued, when we interrupt that process, by defending, explaining, or dominating, we miss the lesson. He didn't look at her, but the room understood. The conversation after. Outside, the ocean air cut through the afternoon heat. People dispersed slowly. Veronica stood alone for a moment, then turned.
Daniel, she said.
He stopped. Yes. I owe you, she began. He held up a hand gently. No, he said. You don't. She blinked. You didn't do this to me, he added. You stayed you. The system did the rest. She nodded slowly. That's the hardest part. He met her eyes then. It usually is. No apology tour. They didn't shake hands. They didn't exchange numbers. There was nothing to repair. Only understanding. Daniel walked toward his car. Veronica walked toward the water. Separate directions. Equal clarity. The meaning of Seat 1A. That evening, Daniel boarded another flight. Not first class. Not economy. Just a seat. As the plane lifted, he looked out at the coastline shrinking below. Seat 1A had never been about luxury. It had been about exposure. Veronica's new beginning. Weeks later, Veronica began consulting quietly. Not in partnerships. In training. Helping organizations understand the cost of behavior after mistakes. She never told the plain story.
She didn't need to.
It lived in how she spoke now. Not every ending announces itself. Some arrive disguised as normal days. A name that comes back around. 3 years after the flight, Daniel Cross saw a familiar name in an unexpected place. Hale Consulting Group. Facilitated ethics and response advisory.
He paused.
Not because he was surprised. Because the distance between then and now felt complete. He closed the file without comment. Growth didn't require approval. Veronica's defining choice. Veronica stood in front of a new client's executive team. No slides. No buzzwords. Just one opening line. This session isn't about mistakes, she said calmly. It's about what you do after them. The room leaned in. She saw it immediately. This wasn't damage control. It was prevention. Daniel faces a question he used to avoid. At a closed investor dinner, someone finally asked Daniel directly, why do your companies handle crises differently? Daniel didn't rush. Because we don't optimize for appearances, he said. We optimize for correction. The table went quiet. Someone nodded. The industry quietly adopts the model. Without announcements, without branding, Daniel's framework appeared elsewhere. Different language. Same structure. Focus on response. On listening. On documented accountability. The origin disappeared. The impact didn't. Veronica meets the version she once was. At a seminar, a young executive challenged her sharply. You're overthinking it, he said. People are too sensitive. Old Veronica would have argued. New Veronica smiled. Then sensitivity isn't the risk, she replied. Blindness is. The room shifted. The executive didn't speak again. Daniel returns to JFK. Years later, Daniel passed through JFK again. Same terminal. Same smell of coffee and impatience. He watched first-class passengers board early, confident, distracted. Seat 1A filled quickly this time. He took Seat 3C. Unremarkable. Intentional. The thought that settles in. As the plane taxied, Daniel reflected. Power didn't belong to seats. Or titles. Or names whispered in cabins. It lived in what people did when no one corrected them. Veronica's quiet closure. That same week, Veronica cleared out an old storage box. Inside was a blazer she had worn on the flight. She held it for a moment, then donated it. Not as rejection. As completion. A conversation without weight. Months later, by chance, Daniel and Veronica crossed paths again. A lobby. A pause. She nodded. He nodded back. No tension. No debt. Just mutual acknowledgement. They had both moved forward. The last lesson travels on. A junior analyst once asked Daniel's operations lead, "Where did this accountability system come from?" The answer was simple. From watching what happens when people don't interrupt consequences. That was enough. Not all power fades. Some of it settles. Into habits, into decisions, into the way people pause before they speak. Daniel's quiet inventory. Daniel Cross sat alone in his office late one evening. No meetings. No calls. Just city lights and a legal pad. He wrote down 3 questions he now asked himself before every decision. Does this protect people or appearances? Does this reward correction or silence? Would this still work if my name disappeared? He circled the 3rd one. That question had outlasted everything else. Veronica's long view. Veronica Hale stood at the back of a training room, watching a new facilitator she had mentored lead a session. She didn't interrupt, didn't correct. She observed. The facilitator handled a tense moment well, paused, listened, redirected. Veronica smiled. This was the work now. Not visibility. Replication. A question from the past. After the session, a participant approached Veronica. "I heard you used to work very differently," he said carefully. Veronica nodded. "I did." "What changed?" She didn't mention a plane, or a spill, or a name. She said only, "I learned that being right isn't the same as being responsible." The man nodded slowly. That answer followed him. Daniel encounters the next generation. At a board review, a young executive presented a report. Halfway through, she stopped herself. "I want to correct something," she said. My earlier response dismissed feedback. I reviewed it again. Daniel noticed how the room reacted. Not defensively, respectfully. He leaned back. This was the outcome. The seat appears again. Months later, Daniel boarded another flight. International this time. First class. Seat 1A was open.
He paused.
Then walked past it.
He chose 2C instead.
The attendant blinked. "Sir, your assigned seat." "I know," Daniel said calmly. "This one's fine." She smiled and adjusted the manifest. Veronica's small ritual. Before every workshop, Veronica now did one thing. She wrote one sentence at the top of her notes. Watch how people respond after. Not before. Not during. After. That was where truth lived. No one apologizes, and that's okay. Neither Daniel nor Veronica ever apologized publicly. They didn't need to. The work had replaced explanation. Change had replaced narrative. The world moves forward. Industries shifted again. New problems. New crises. But the response language lingered. Documented accountability. Measured pauses. Less instinct to dominate the moment. It wasn't perfect. It was better. The near ending. One evening, Daniel stood at an airport window, watching planes line up for departure. Metal, fuel, momentum. All dependent on systems working together. One failure corrected early could save hundreds of lives. He smiled faintly. Veronica's final reflection. Veronica closed her notebook at the end of a long day. She didn't think about what she'd lost anymore. She thought about what she'd stopped protecting. That felt like growth. The world didn't change with an announcement. It rarely does. There was no headline that morning. No interview. No summary of what had happened years ago on a delayed flight out of JFK. What changed lived somewhere quieter. The final flight. Daniel cross-boarded a night flight heading west. Not for business. Not for leverage. Just to go home. He took a window seat, economy this time, placed his bag beneath it, and fastened his belt. The cabin filled with ordinary sounds. Overhead bins closing. Soft conversations. A child laughing 2 rows back. No one noticed him. That was fine. A familiar scene, rewritten. A few rows ahead, turbulence shook the cabin lightly. A drink tipped. Spilled. The passenger froze, then immediately apologized. The flight attendant documented it calmly, helped clean it up, and moved on. No tension. No judgment. No performance. Daniel watched quietly. The system worked. Veronica's last session. Across the country, Veronica Hale ended a long workshop. No applause. Just thoughtful silence. A young manager approached her afterward. "How do you know when accountability is real?" he asked. Veronica smiled. "When people change what they do next," she said. "Not what they say." She packed her bag. Her work was done for the day. 2 lives, fully separate. Daniel and Veronica didn't think about each other anymore. Not with weight. Not with resentment. Just as parts of a story that had already delivered its meaning. They had both moved forward, in different directions, with the same clarity. The view from above. As Daniel's plane climbed, the city lights blurred into constellations below. Thousands of lives. Thousands of decisions. Thousands of moments where someone could interrupt accountability. Or let it do its work. He rested his head against the window. The truth about power. Power, Daniel knew now, wasn't loud. It didn't argue. It didn't announce itself. It waited. It revealed people through response, not status. And when left alone, it corrected more than any confrontation ever could. Veronica's final note. That night, Veronica wrote one last sentence in her notebook. "The moment didn't break me. It returned me." She closed the book and didn't open it again. The last image. At 37,000 feet, the plane leveled out. Seatbelt sign off. Cabin calm. No one whispered. No one stared. Just people moving through the sky, carried by systems they trusted. The way it should be. Final words. Some stories end with justice. This one ended with alignment. No winner. No villain. Just a quiet correction. That changed how people behaved. After the moment passed. And that was enough.